Welcome to Refirement Life, the podcast for anyone navigating life transitions or planning to make life transitions to ensure your next years are your best years. Listen in for insightful, generous, and sometimes humorous conversation. It's time to get fired up with Christine Zamuda and Muge Wood, your hosts for this latest episode of Refirement Life.
Hey everyone, this is Muge Wood, along with my awesome co-host Christine Zamuda. Today we are delighted to bring you a very special guest yet again, and this will be my awesome husband of 30 years, Brad Wood. He's actually on this podcast for a very specific reason, besides being my awesome partner. He is elected to retire maybe a little earlier than the norm from corporate America, so we are going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about how he's getting refired up these days with his focus on a brand new nonprofit called UTMA All Stars that's focused on financial literacy for disadvantaged youth, alongside with some matching funds to set them up for success as they embark on life. So we are going to go deep into that. Before we do so, as we normally do, let's talk about our reflections since our last podcast. Christine, what's happening on your side?
Sure. Well, we're always looking for great examples of living longer and better. And I was listening to a podcast, and there is a woman, Vivian Levy. She's 104, and she swims every single day. So she swims competitively. She's finding it's a way to make great social connections, keeps her body healthy, and it is just another example of living longer and better. I just thought it was kind of amazing that, here she is, rain, shine, snow. She lives in Brooklyn Heights. She jumps in the pool every single day, no fail, and keep swimming.
That's amazing. It reminds me of Finding Nemo. Keep swimming. And no
Exactly.
matter what happens, keep swimming. And if it is cold swimming, maybe even better. Remember the cold water plunge discussion we had? That's incredible. I mean, there's so much to learn from super agers, and they do have some secrets that we can learn from.
Too. She had a really funny quote. They said, "Well, why do you swim so much?" And she said, "I swim because it takes the nonsense out of my head."
Yeah, I would say get the monkeys in the head a little under control, because there are lots of them at times.
Right.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. On my side, I had an awesome opportunity to share our refirement endeavor and our insights during a leadership summit hosted by Institute of Electronics Engineers in Detroit last week. And it was an awesome conversation. And what it led to is just continuous reflection that it's never too late for us to live our most joyful and meaningful lives. The audience was awesome. They shared examples of how they are starting their businesses that they always wanted to do. They joined the nonprofit boards, and they are contributing to the community and finding a lot of meaning and purpose in their lives past what may have been considered the path to take in a structured career path. So it was really awesome, and it's very possible that we will have gained some new guests as a result of that, as well as new subscribers. So that was awesome. The only downside, Christine, is I needed you with me. It is difficult to duplicate your energy just by myself, but I had your picture with me on the slide, so that was good encouragement.
Oh, that's great to hear. Well, thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing the story, and obviously meeting some new people. We always welcome new guests and listeners as a result. So I certainly appreciate that. The other thing to mention that I thought is interesting, and you know how some things start to get in your algorithm as you're going through social media. Something that keeps popping up for me now is that there are many European countries that are offering what they're calling a retirement residency. So Italy is one, Ireland is one, and I know that there are several others. And I thought this could be interesting for some of our guests just to learn a little bit more about them. Essentially what they are is, You have to demonstrate that you have financial means, and the financial means is not like a huge amount. So they're really targeting people with a pension, 401k, anything from like, you could establish the fact that you have $50,000 to $100,000 a year to be able to spend. And you apply. In most cases, they're giving you a 1-year residency to start, and it can be extended to 5 years. It could be extended to a lifetime. So I just found that was super interesting. There are some nuances between, what you could get in their healthcare plan versus, what we might have here. But it's worth looking into for anyone who wants to do that on a short-term basis or even a longer-term basis.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That could be the gap year concept at a different time in life. It sounds very interesting. Let's include that in a future episode. And better yet, we may need to go sign up for it just to see.
Yes. Is that okay, Brad?
Yeah, it has to be experiential. Experiential learning. So thank you for that. Now let's turn our attention to our guest. Dear Brad, please introduce yourself, your background, your current status, post-retirement. How are things?
All right. So my name's Brad Wood. So I grew up in New Jersey in the 70s, and I was the youngest of 4 children. My father was a civil engineer. And as I was growing up, I wanted to be a civil engineer. But I wanted to do work in the offshore area. I saw James Cameron's The Abyss, and just the idea of living under ocean and the complexities of being able to do that. And when you think about it, a lot of the turmoil around the world is associated with land. And if you can actually build civilizations underwater, it would just open, huge areas. So I wanted to go and be an engineer. So I went to Lehigh University for my master's and got a master's in civil engineering structures. And as I was finishing up my master's thesis, I met Miguel, and I was on my way to go to University of Texas at Austin to get my PhD in civil engineering structures, but I was going to be working on concrete structures. And so moved to UT, and Miguel and I got married in December of 1993, so we're almost 30 years. And
we'll make it, I think.
We'll see how this podcast goes.
Yeah, we'll see how the podcast goes.
Oh, we have got like 6 weeks. Hopefully we make it. Yes, thank you.
So then after I graduated, I joined Exxon, and I achieved my goal. I became a civil engineer in the offshore structures group of Exxon, and I was in that group until the merger with Mobil. And then I started going, and I moved into the technology organization doing software and software development and programming, and was in that group, taking various roles of subject matter expert because of my role in the research organization, all the way to supervisory and managerial positions. Ultimately, until I became a business architect focused on business strategy and business roadmaps for the research organization. And but as Miguel and I were a young couple, we had we were getting $1,000 a month stipend for being at UT Austin, and so we're trying to balance bills. So I maintain an Excel spreadsheet of, okay, I can pay this bill today, and I'm going to sign up for this 0% interest card, and we'll transfer the balance over there, and then we'll pay the minimum balance in 6 months, and then so I've been very involved in our finances for a long time, just trying to keep us above the water line of the payments and our expenditures, because when you're a young couple, all these things happen. And then when we moved to Houston to starting to have a more salary, but it doesn't make a difference because your expenses go up. So it's like, oh, we want to save for a house, down payment for a house, and oh, we need to furnish the house once we buy the house. And so constantly managing all those things. And at the same time, I also had a goal around my retirement, how much I needed to save. And I had a spreadsheet, and Miguel hated the spreadsheet because I had her working until age 74.
That spreadsheet was in need of severe update.
Well, I am.
And that's 74 years, right?
the age of 74.
Not happening.
And then, but we were living till 104, so it was all good. And I said, well, we have to make sure that we have enough money to live to 104. And I started figuring out, okay, what that number needs to be and how much we needed to spend per year and all those things. And as I was getting older and working with Exxon, I started to get closer to my 55th birthday. I was about maybe 2 years away, and I was looking at my spreadsheet, and I was like, we've done pretty well with Microsoft stock and with Exxon stock, and compounding interest has really done very well for us. Our kids went to in-state school, so their 529 plans were paying off, and I started looking at the number that I planned to have when I reached 74, and I'm like, we're pretty much there. So I started thinking, it's like, well, I could retire when I turn 55, and she's like, what?
And
That's the truth.
I hope you changed her number from 74 when you had that conversation.
So we talked about it, and I was like, I'd really like to think about retiring at 55. But I had 2 years of contemplating this and looking at numbers. And one of the nice things about Exxon is they have a pension plan.
Right.
And the pension plan is a guaranteed benefit of so much money per month. And that's what they guarantee. And it's based on your salary times your years of service and all these things. But until you reach the age of 55, you only get 20% of that amount. And then the day you turn 55, you now get 75% of that total amount. And then every year after that, you get another 5%. And so at 100%, if you retire at age 60, you get 100% of that annuity for the rest of your life if you retire. The alternative is to use a lump sum. And the thing is that lump sum is tied back to, a bundle of treasury notes at, 10-year, 20-year, 30-year treasuries. And the interest rates at that time were really, really low 2 years before I was going to retire. We had the pandemic and, near zero interest rates. And there was a lump sum number that was really, really big. And I'm watching that number, and then all of a sudden the interest rates started rising, and they started rising more, and that big number started getting smaller and smaller and smaller. It got to the point where just before my birthday, the projections were that number was going to drop down to the point where I would be working for free if I didn't retire.
Wow.
What the amount of money I would lose by not taking the lump sum then was equivalent to working for free for at least a year. And as interest rates continued to rise, probably a couple of years. And so it's like, this doesn't make sense. So we talked and says, I think it's time to pull the trigger. But the interesting thing is I'm talking to, I'm a mentor to a lot of people at Exxon because of my role and the experience I had. And a lot of people are mystified by the whole ExxonMobil retirement plan. It's like, okay, what do you get? How's this number work? How did, all these things? And it's very, very complicated. And you have a very short time window in order to get everything done and get it done right. And so, you have the whole, you have Exxon stock awards. Okay, well, how do you do, all that transition, and how do you get out of the company 401k plan and migrate it over to IRA? So I was talking to a lot of people because I was well versed in a lot of these different investment vehicles, and we've talked to financial advisors and all that. And I came to realize that, one of the things that really people don't know is finance. I mean, they may know math, they may know politics, but they just don't really understand finance. And back when our kids were younger, I started investing them in UTMA accounts where we could gift money to them, and they could invest in this. We would invest in the S&P 500 index fund. And we started, when I learned about it, they were about 11 and 13. So it was a little bit late. But that compounding interest over time, they could do a down payment on a house by the time they turned 18. And when they turned 18, that money transferred to them. It was now in their brokerage account, and they could, buy Coca-Cola stock or Disney stock or Southwest Airlines stock, and off they were going. And one of the things when you're retirement, you're like, okay, what's going to be my next goal? I always had a goal throughout the life. It's like, okay, I want to have this much money when I was 74. Yeah, I achieved that early. Fantastic. Okay, what's my next goal? And my next goal really came around, how can I make a difference in my community? How can I give back to my community and really share the learnings I've had? And one of the best groups I really thought about was children, because if I could help children from starting at age kindergarten and provide them with foundations and fundamentals of financial literacy, so by the time they reach 18, they're not going to get caught in the payday loans or the pawn shops or the title loans and a lot of things that cause you to get sucked into a debt trap. And I thought, well, you can't just give them the knowledge, because it's something they need to apply. They need some capital, investment capital, to be able to do this. And I thought about it. I said, well, if we donated, if I created a charity and we donated $200 per year, and we got them to match it, so they would have $400 per year, starting in kindergarten till the time they reach 18, they could have between $9,000 and $14,000 in that account with a 6% interest rate. And you could put a down payment on a car for that. And I thought, I got to do this. This would change the world if every child, every United States citizen, by the time they turned 18, could put a down payment on a car or use that money and compound it until they reach 64. And, they would have upwards of $170,000.
Yeah. Especially when you're working with disadvantaged youth, because having access to travel and transportation opens up a whole job options that they wouldn't otherwise have.
Exactly. And the other part was I was meeting with some other folks that were trying to do some startups, and she was dealing with foster kids. And when you think about foster kids, they have, once they reach 18, they're out of the foster care system and they're out on the street. And so she's trying to set up this where like halfway houses where, the kids have a place to sleep and, they can give them some supplemental training so that they can get jobs and all that. I'm like, these are the same kids, if you know them early on, by the time they reach 18, they would have dollars in their pocket too. That could change so many lives. So the idea is to start this small. So we're starting it here in Fort Bend County, Texas. But the idea is to grow this so that you could have chapters all around Texas and maybe all around the United States. That no child, no citizen of this country at the age of 18 should be poor.
Right. No, that's awesome. And how do you get across the concept of compounding interest and also encourage these young people to delay spending? Because everyone really likes things in the now, especially when you don't have a lot and you finally have some money in your hands, right?
Well, the interesting thing is psychologists have discovered that the saving, being able to wait, the savings versus spending kind of switch in kids happens between age of 7 and 13. And I see knowledge, the whole idea about compounding interest is probably too much for a kindergartner or fifth grader to really understand. But it's the knowledge, it's the compounding of the knowledge. So what we're planning to use is we're working with Chase Bank, and they have, as well as the FDIC.gov, there's a Money Matters curriculum that goes from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade that covers age appropriate topics. So a kindergartner, you give them a sheet of paper and it's like, okay, here's a quarter, put the quarter on top of the quarter symbol and take the nickel and put it on top of the nickel. Just understanding, the different monetary pieces of currency. And then, let's try to add those up and tell how much is on the page and write that down. And so you're already introducing concepts of math and currency, separation of currency into the different classes that, is something that probably kids may not have experienced.
Right. And it's great. I would think from your perspective to attach yourself to a like organization with a mission who's scaling and reaching, right? And then you all slipstream into that and add additional support, start to identify potential participants, right?
Yeah, because I talked to other organizations, and there's no organization that I was able to find that does the three things we're trying to do. One is the financial literacy curriculum, which we can have a standardized curriculum, but also the dollar for dollar matching in a UTMA account. I mean, the UTMA account is a custodial account. You put the money in, it doesn't come out until they reach age 18. And so for every dollar they put in, we'll match with a dollar. And if they don't have the money to put in for that, we can also do direct grants for that. But the idea is to, if I give $100 to a kindergartner, that has a, almost 4 times multiplier by the time they turn 18. It's huge.
Right.
And so I see using compounding dollars as having a huge lever and a benefit over giving today's benefit to today's need. You should use compounding benefits for future needs. It makes so much more sense.
It is. I think it is remarkable to me, the pairing of financial education with matching funds, because you can certainly give funds to disadvantaged youth at any stage, maybe to cover their college tuition or transportation cost or whatever it may be, or you can offer financial education. But I think pairing the two with the hopes that the power of compounding interest is understood, and once they get that seed fund, so to speak, at the age of 18, they use it in the best way possible. So one thing I'm thinking about, and I think we are continually thinking about this, is it is a long-term investment into a kid and a family, but that's what makes it powerful. But how do you think about making it stay? Because 12, 13 years is a long time for a commitment sometimes, for this child and the family to stay with the program. What are your thoughts on that? How to make it lasting?
Well, I mean, our best bet is to try to make it as easy as possible for them to participate. So we're trying to keep, the gathering places where we're providing the training. So like our first training right now is scheduled for, we're going to go work at the Chase Bank in Stafford and over on Wilcrest, and they have a conference center there that holds 30 to 40 people. And so we'll have our first session there with kindergarten through second graders for the first hour from 11 till 12, and then from 12 to 12:30 we'll have open session where they can sign up for Chase banking accounts or UTMA accounts, and we'll put in our first grant so that they have the funds, and we'll have paper forms they can fill out. And basically, we mail those in to Vanguard. We're working with Vanguard to create the UTMA accounts. And then once those accounts are established, we'll start populating it and funding the S&P 500 index funds. And that money, they get monthly statements or quarterly statements that go to their house, and they see, oh, $33 went into my account, and now it's $37 because the S&P 500 went up. And that type of growth over time can be self-fulfilling, because they say, oh, we want to go back so we can get another $33, and then go back again and again. And you see that it's not like winning the lottery. It's not a one-time thing. This is growing a tree step by step, and it needs to be continually watered. Now, certainly if the child and their family move to a different district, the money that goes into there is still the child's. And so by the time they turn 18, yes, the money will compound. It won't be as large as, $9,000 to $14,000, but it will still be a fairly significant amount of money that at the age of 18, Vanguard sends them a letter, says, hey, we need to transfer this account to your ownership. And that money is theirs. But our goal is to keep them tied with us and also keep connected. The other thing that we're doing is we submitted an application to JP Morgan Chase to create online curriculum so that we'd have financial literacy from K through 12 online, so they could get the credit of attending one of the sessions by attending and doing the online sessions. And that way we could then continue to stay in touch with them, even if they go outside the Fort Bend County area.
Yeah. That's
But the
I
whole
think
thing
that
is, this is so expansive. I mean, it's
right.
very modular. We have a very standard curriculum. We have a standard process, and you can see how this little molecule could expand and cover so much more.
I think the partnerships are also going to be key to add credibility, visibility, scale. Just like Christine, the work stuff that we do when you go to market with an offering, right, of any kind, how you need to create that engine. So shifting gears a little bit, I know, Brad, you have been spending a lot of time setting up this foundation from scratch, which is actually very different from volunteering within the context of an existing organization. And you had a lot of learnings in the process that may be interesting for our subscribers to hear as they may consider starting their own nonprofit for a cause that they deeply care about. What were some learnings and insights that you have gained so far?
So I actually documented the roadmap, but the first step is always to figure out and test your idea to see if it's really going to be feasible. There's a executive organization in a lot of major cities that you can bounce your nonprofit idea against them and see, hey, is there something already out there that does exactly the same thing and you just aren't aware of it? And sometimes that 70% of the ideas that people come up with are already things that are existing. The other part is you also have to test against the IRS 5013C criteria to try to test to see, is my idea something that is going to be able to be recognized as a nonprofit idea? And to be honest, that was my biggest first stumbling block area that I was concerned about, was the idea of giving money to children that were donated by other people. Is that going to be considered charitable? Because you can see normally it's like, oh, well, giving food or giving clothing or giving all these other things, non-monetary contributions to children. But the thing is that this fundamentally was something I was really concerned about. And so, but the first step you have to do is create a corporation. Once you've established that you're going to do this, you need to establish a corporation in your state. And there's your state controller can tell you what that process is. But in Texas, you fill out a form, it's $25, and you have to name 3 people to be on your board of directors. And one of them has to be a non-family member. So on our board of directors, it was McGay, myself, and a friend of McGay's that used to work for Microsoft. And that was our core team. And then going through the process of submitting an application to the IRS. And each one of these steps, you're paying money out of your pocket. I have 0 donations. All of it is just out of my own pocket. So submitting a nonprofit status request to the IRS and filling out the form, they had like 3 hours of training videos so that you could fill out this form properly.
Yeah, I've been there. I also put a not-for-profit together and just felt the process firsthand, and it's a process. Nothing is fast. Nothing is expedient.
Well, I was really impressed. I was scared by this 1023 form that the IRS makes you fill out, and people often hire a lawyer, and it's like $5,000 to hire a lawyer to fill out this 1023 form. But they also have a 1023 EZ form. So if you're going to make less than $50,000 a year with your organization within the next 3 years, you can use that, and it's a $275 application fee. It was like 2 pages. I didn't have to come up with a complicated financial statement and all these other things. And within 3 weeks, I got a letter from the IRS saying you're approved.
Oh, wow. That was fast.
Damn.
That was way fast. I mean, they must work better in Texas than they do in Maryland. It took my 6 months. And they didn't request any more information. So I kept calling. Yeah. So I guess results may vary.
Yeah, results may vary, but then after that, you then have to establish your corporate entity, your branding. So I had to create a website. So I signed up for Wix and created a Wix website, which was fantastic because I'm a technical person, but I'm not a web developer. And it was just nice that they had all these, pre-populated screens with images already. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. But I had to change all the words and make sure everything. But you also need, what phone number am I going to use? What physical address am I going to use? So I'm using my personal physical address because I don't want to pay for an office. My goal is to make every dollar that we have donated go to the children.
That's awesome.
And contribute. So any fee I have, $200, I mean, that's 2 kids. I'd rather have that money go to the kids wherever possible.
Yeah.
And then creating business cards and printing business cards and all that stuff.
Yeah. So
go ahead, Christine.
I was just going to ask, on your site, can we donate already? Is there is there an opportunity to sponsor a few kids on your site?
Yeah, so on the site, so we're called the UTMA All Stars. So it's www.utma-all-stars.org. And on there, we have a listing to there's a Zelle account that you can wire money from. Most banks have Zelle, and so you can use Zelle. We also support Venmo. We also support Fidelity Charitable, and we also support Vanguard Charitable. So if you have accounts in any of those entries, we also have a PO box. So if you want to mail a letter with a check saying, hey, Brad, we really want to support your organization, it's PO Box 19453 in Sugar Land, Texas 77496. And then, we'll deposit the money in our Chase bank account. And then as we meet with the children in January, every one of those dollars is going to go into those accounts. Now,
awesome.
the one thing that we're working on right now is to get insurance. We are dealing with young children. So we do need to make sure we have general liability, because I wanted to get a venue to be able to, have our first meeting. And they're like, oh, well, you need $3 million in liability. You need $100,000 in facilities. And it just kind of skipped my head that, oh, yeah, we need insurance. And we also need insurance to cover the board of directors, too. So that, I'm right now trying to get a quote for a policy. I'm hoping it's, in the range of $100 to $150 a month or something, but we'll find out. But part of that is, just the operations of the facility, life insurance. And, if you want to rent a venue, that's like $300 for 2 hours or 3 hours.
Right.
So, but we're not, we're not religiously affiliated. Our goal is, we're not doing a means test to say, oh, sorry, your mom's wearing Dolce & Gabbana shoes or whatever. But the intent is that every dollar that we're giving is going towards a needful group. And to be honest, in Fort Bend County, 50% of the children attending Fort Bend ISD are disadvantaged. 50%. It's huge.
Yeah.
So it's a rich opportunity for us to really make a difference.
Right. I just thinking about, past experiences and running PTA events and school events, one suggestion is maybe you just do it at the school. They usually have insurance riders for events. No, you can't do it.
No, you have to show your insurance. You have to show proof of insurance before you can get the facility. And then they charge you $175 an hour.
Yeah.
That was one of the learnings, unexpected. How much goes into, because children are involved and school is involved, the insurance thresholds are quite high. Whether it's one child or 1,000 children, you have to go through the setup and infrastructure of this. So still in the process of securing insurance and also partnering with institutions like Chase so that there's partnership in that regard. It's amazing. It's a lot more complicated than we think would be the case.
Right, right. Well, I was just suggesting if you hadn't looked at it, we would do an insurance rider for the event itself.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And the school would cover it. So we covered everything, from the moon bounce, all of that. But it was like $300 for the event. You didn't have to pay an ongoing policy. If I was just thinking if, something
Yeah,
to
but
get
since,
started.
since we're dealing with money and
Mhm.
we are dealing with children, and we do need to make sure we have
Yeah,
the
clearly.
coverage. And the other part is, having an agreement, working and trying to identify a lawyer to help us build out a parental agreement to say, oh, this is what we're going to say, this is what we're going to do,
Mhm.
this is what we expect you to do, and the terms of how we do the matching and all that we're going to lay out for them. So
Nice.
our goal is to have everything ready by January 20th, Saturday, on the 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. and we're gonna just kick, and it's gonna be awesome.
That's awesome.
It's a
game
great way
time.
to, yeah, it's a great way to start the new year. That's the
Exactly.
kind of resolution we can rally behind. So as we wind down on our segment, I think we had a great conversation on UTMA All Stars purpose, the joy and meaning, Brad, it is giving you in your post-corporate America life. So I think for our subscribers to follow and contribute to UTMA All Stars, it's through the website, it's through the means that you called out. So I think this may be a good time to transition to the final segment of wrap up. What do you
Yes.
think, Christine?
I do. We had to take advantage of this opportunity. So first, we wish you a ton of success with UTMA. And there's a little bonus episode in this session. I wanted to know a little bit more about what life with Muge is all about.
Mm.
So for our listeners, Brad does not have a preview questions, and none of them are too terrible at all. But I think just to give that insider perspective, you live with Muge, obviously a strong partnership, but I want to know, a little bit more about your perspective. And my first question is for you, Brad, is do you remember the moment where you understood that Muge was the full package? Beauty, looks, intelligence, sense of humor, success. Please tell me a little bit about that moment in time.
Well, I think basically when McKay and I originally met at Lehigh, there was a lunch that we were attending, and she was being introduced around the tables, and I was sitting at a table with my friends, and she was being introduced, and as she moved on to the next table, my friends were elbowing me. It's like, Brad, she didn't look at anybody but you, and I was like, ah. So then I went on was trying to have a date with her, but I couldn't find her name. I mean, Muge. I just knew her first name, and I'm just like, I couldn't find her in the book. I'm like, Mougay, Moogay. I mean, I couldn't find, and so I called a Turkish friend, and he's like, there's some lady answered, and she's like, oh no, he moved, and all that. So I tried her professor, and he's like, I'm not a dating service, and I tried, the administrator, and it's like, oh, she just joined. She's not yet on the payroll, so we don't have her personal information yet. And so weeks are going by, and finally somebody came out and said, oh, her name is Muge, Muge, and this is her phone number. And so I was like, so I called, and it was like 9 o'clock, and she was at the library, she tells me, and it was like,
the library.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to go? Do you want to go? And so we saw Batman as our first movie, and when I picked her up, we're driving and talking, and she told me about the hardship it was to the education system in Turkey, how she was like top of her class and attending, these rather challenging high schools and college curriculums, and then coming over here with nothing, and attending and getting her master's in business administration. I knew she was a keeper. I mean, she was a driven person, but the other part was she liked me. She was a great listener, and she was into me. And for me, that was, just like peanut butter and jelly. I mean, it was amazing. And so we were talking and driving, and I actually lost track of time, and we passed the movie theater, and I had to turn around and come back. And
sweet.
when we went for Chinese, and we're talking, we're asking each other, it's like, what, I told her the story of how I tracked her down, and I was like, yeah, I guess now it could be like, stalking, but at the time it was the only way to do things. You didn't have cell phones, you didn't have, you just had a phone book to page through. And she's like, when did you call your Turkish friend? And I said, such and such. She's like, oh, well, that was me that answered the phone. I took over his apartment. He moved out, and I took over the apartment. So when I was calling my Turkish friend to find her, she was the one that answered the phone.
And you were just being coy, like, how hard is he going to work to find me?
I did not know that he was actually looking for me, because he asked for the Turkish friend who lived in that apartment with hopes that he would get my contact information through him. So when I answered the phone, I said, he's not here. I didn't know that he was looking for me. So once this story came out to its fullest extent, I am thinking, wow, this is incredible. He really wanted to see me and get to know me. And this is very positive, besides the fact that I thought he was very handsome. So I'm like, he's tenacious, he's determined, he is grit. And the other thing is, at the time we met, Brad already committed to coming down to UT Austin for his doctoral degree in civil engineering. And I was quite disappointed by that. And I thought, well, we just met for a couple months, and now he's going to go to one of the biggest state schools with a lot of beautiful girls, I'm sure, in Texas. And how is that going to work? But the long distance relationship we had for a year or so, and how Brad showed up in that, gave me additional confirmation that he was the one for me, as I have been the one for him. So it was it's just a good thing to look back on and reflect as we approach our 30-year anniversary. So thank you for asking the question, Christine.
Oh yeah, that's a wonderful story. That's a wonderful story. And I could just imagine, I mean, just all the steps and even just figuring out how Muge's name was spelled. I mean, my mom was like, I'm here at my mom's in Palm Beach. She's like, when am I going to meet Mooj?
Right.
You're never going to meet Mooj.
That's right. That's right. That's
No.
right.
I learned that's a slapping offense. Sorry.
Yeah, that's just always the case, right? How do you say it, and the work it takes, 4 letters, right? How it comes together. It's right. It's amazing. The other thing is, I asked this question to Brad a couple times. I said, when we met, he didn't know anything about Turkey. I don't think he even had a passport at the time. I said, how did you keep in mind so open to, get to know me and think of a relationship? Because people can be skeptical, right? I don't know about this, and different country, different religion. And, he said, you came all the way here pretty much with a whole lot of nothing, and building a life for yourself. And he said he thought that was pretty special. He said, I thought that was pretty special. I didn't know much more than that at the moment to make the call that I should get to know you. So I'm like, I am liking what I am hearing here.
Yeah. But I did learn that she didn't know how to cook. I learned very early on, because went up to her apartment for a coffee, and there's this big black spot on the linoleum on the countertop right next to the stove. And I'm like, what's that? She's like, well, I was heating some water and I put the pan there. And I was just like, okay. And I went shopping with her, and she's buying like premium orange juice and this, premium milk and, top line cereal. I'm like, no. You're living on a budget. You've got to buy the frozen orange juice, the powdered milk.
No, Brad, no frozen
cereal.
orange juice.
No,
That's
I
undrinkable.
Yeah,
That's
I don't like the
undrinkable.
taste of those things. So I got the
No.
premium Minute Maid pulp thing, but
She didn't have the money.
Yeah.
She didn't have the money to pay for it. She had an Amex card that didn't have a limit on it, and so she could keep, and she's paying the minimum balance on the Amex card. So imagine what our first relationship was, paying the bills off.
All right,
okay.
we have a
I
couple
can
more
just use my
questions. We have a
credit
couple
card.
more questions. So maybe this is a good time to ask this one. So now that you are retired, you have a little bit more time, although you're very involved in UTMA, and that's going to take up considerable amount of your efforts. But I really need to know, what's your go-to way of showing support for Muge while she's still working? And more importantly, like, how do you support this podcast?
Ooh. Well, in general, I try to be quiet during the day because she has various meetings that are happening, and she can locate her office pretty much any place around the house. So she can be up in her study area, she can be over on the dining table, she could be at the counter. So I try to be, conscious and recognize she may be on, for the various things. So, just being courteous of time. Sometimes make coffee, but my main goal is I get up early so I run 3.5 miles around the lake. So I make sure she likes having a bright environment. So I open up all the blinds and turn on the lights in the kitchen and start up the coffee maker so it's ready for her. And there's little things that I know that can help streamline her day, and she just comes down and it's bright and shiny and
it's very
the
sweet.
dishwasher and things like that. So I try to do things like that and make sure the refrigerator has things that
Premium
we need.
orange juice.
Well, we can afford it now, but the thing is that we don't drink it because it's too many calories. And so we're watching our weight and watching our cholesterol intake and all these things. So, but the thing is, as you get older, you become much more conscious about what you're eating. And one of my goals when I retired was to lose 45 pounds. So I've lost 32 so far, and but I'm goal driven. That's but eating right and keeping track of all these things makes all the difference. Same thing with your finances.
That's right. So here's a little question that might require a little bit of creativity. So if your home life had a theme song that represents your life together, what would it be and why?
This is hard.
I know.
Yeah. So as Brad thinks about that, keep thinking, and you can tell I did not share any questions with Brad in advance because it had to be spontaneous. I will just say
Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
Oh,
okay. All right. That's
because
very cool.
I think every household and every relationship goes through a full spectrum. You have the springtime, you have the summer, you have the fall, and you have the winter. And I think that is probably the most inclusive, element of that. And we feel a great deal of joy when our boys are home from school and we're all together. We with the Christmas, with the holidays coming up, feeling special and being able to decorate for Halloween and decorate for Thanksgiving and Christmas are all things that give us, a great deal of joy and all that. But it's, it's not all, sunshine and rainbows. I mean,
right.
There's tough times too. So we get through those as well. But it's a 4-season relationship.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, 30 years is a testament that you don't have sunshine and rainbows every single day of the year, right? But it's clear that you all are a brilliant pair and complement each other so well. We're planning to have my husband on here, and I was just thinking what he might say for that question. And I think it might be like, rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby. The boat, don't tip the boat over.
Well, but the other thing was, the first song that came to my head was George Thorogood, "Bad to the Bone."
Oh,
But
nice. That's a great tune.
but that's just one of my favorite songs. It just popped in my head.
And when you asked that question, Christine, I'm thinking, what would Christine paint to go with that song? Because I know your abstract art is inspired by music.
That's right.
So what would you paint to go with that song? And with the Four Seasons, which is an awesome masterpiece, what also comes to my mind is, yes, our lives and relationships, everything goes through transitions and seasons, but how can we maximize the meaning, joy, and purpose in each season and support one another, which is kind of also the essence of our podcast to a certain extent. And you just have to be so intentional about it. And Brad, I appreciate you being my partner, being on this podcast. And I also want you to know that even the small things that you do make a big difference. So it is true. When I come downstairs, I see the bright sunlight pouring through the windows. It brightens my day. And I've got this little thing. We always have decorations to go with the season, like Halloween. We got a snow globe with a haunted house in it, and it sparkles. So when you plug it in, you get extra light and motion. And I love those things.
Uh-huh.
So Brad makes sure to plug it in the morning. So, it's part of the festive theme. Just like the seasons of our lives, we have thematic decorations that need to be turned on.
Christmas one here shortly. But
yeah, Christmas one will come out shortly. So because it's all about the sparkle, the joy, and putting a smile on your face.
It's so nice. It's so nice. Well, I think to wrap up, any other things to share with the audience? You're certainly goal driven. You have a wonderful vision for the UTMA not-for-profit. Are there any other bucket list items that you're thinking about as you live your life in the best possible way, Brad?
It was interesting because I was reading this article about what's the difference between being rich and wealthy. Mm-hmm. And the idea of being wealthy is that you have the time to do the things that you need to and want to do, that you have the relationships that you want to have and need to have, that you have the physical health and stamina and aptitude that you can be out there and be engaged with people, and that you have the mental faculties and you're challenging your mind and being out there and making a difference and having a mission are key things to being wealthy. And you don't necessarily have to have a tremendous amount of money to be wealthy. It's just that whole sense of being and the whole sense. And that's really what I hope to share, is that your life is not your work. Your work is to help you build your life, and that your family, your relationships, and your missions, and how you impact your community, all those things are of tremendous value, and that you're limiting yourself, that if you see you lose your job and your whole sense of worth just craters, you have to realize that your sense of wealth and your sense of self-purpose is really much more than that.
Absolutely. That's a great way to close in the session. And it's a great reminder for everyone. So thank you for sharing that. And such a pleasure to meet you and spend this time with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Till the next time.
Thank you for listening. Our hope is to spark a little joy, inspire, and educate our listeners in ways to live an even more meaningful life. If you have reactions to share from what you've heard, please visit our website, refirement.life, to leave a voice message. You may even be featured in a future episode. To keep in touch, subscribe to our podcast, Refirement Life, using the podcast player of your choice. Always remember, you are never too old to set a new goal or to dream a new dream. Thanks again for joining us on this episode. Until next time.